New data shows U.S. oil and gas drilling permits surged 55% in just under a year. The Interior Department approved more than 5,700 permits between Inauguration Day and January 6th of the new year. Oil prices right now are trading at around $61 a barrel, up fractionally, as you can see here. The price of crude is at $61.88. The Energy and Interior Departments focused on cutting red tape to reshore American energy. But yesterday, a federal judge ruled that the administration's termination of Biden-era clean energy grants was unlawful, accusing President Trump of targeting Democrat-led states. Joining me now is U.S. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. Secretary, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. A lot to get to. I want to start on these permits. Give our audience a sense of why all of those permits being approved is a positive, up 50+% in just under a year.
Well, President Trump promised to drill, baby, drill, and his policy of increasing an abundant supply of energy, creating energy dominance for America, is bringing home the goals of dropping inflation at home and bringing prosperity to Americans and bringing peace abroad. This is a double win for President Trump. When we're stronger with energy here, it lowers the cost of everything, the clothes on your back, the food on your table, the gas in your car, the home that you heat. All of those are driving down President Trump, breaking the back of inflation. But being energy abundant has allowed us to take the actions, whether it's with eliminating Iran's nuclear capability or arresting Maduro. All of those things possible because of President Trump's energy abundance, energy dominance agenda.
And what about this fight, energy versus environment, that the Democrats are talking about, and this judge saying that canceling the Biden-era policies was unlawful, Secretary?
Well, this has to do with the 5 very large offshore wind projects in the Northeast. There was a new security report that came out, classified by the Department of War in December. That indicated that there was absolutely potential national security risks once these things are completed and the blades are spinning because of radar interference. That was the basis for the stoppage of the work order on those projects right now. Well, discussions could continue between the Department of War and the developers of those offshore wind projects. But a judge ruled yesterday in favor of the Biden-era decision. Today, there's another hearing today in federal court. There's another one on Friday. There's 5 separate cases. So we'll have to see where things fall after these legal cases get through their first phase.
Secretary, what do you want to say about this block on critical minerals? I mean, China has been trying to bully the U.S. as well as Japan. What do you think is the fastest way or best way to break this dependence on China? Well,
President Trump in this administration very focused on not just drill, baby, drill, but map, baby, map, and mine, baby, mine. We've got to get ourselves back in the mining industries in this country, and that includes the rare earth minerals and the critical minerals we need for automotive, for defense, for high tech. They're essential to everyday life today to have our capability here and have it be secure. So President Trump, again, using diplomacy around the world, building a compact of nations that can trade freely around critical minerals that already includes Japan, Korea, Australia, and others. I mean, there's a resolve among the free world to not get in this position where China can have a stranglehold on the minerals that they could, if they came within weeks earlier this year of shutting down every auto plant in the world, that just can't happen. We've got to get back in those businesses.
Yeah, it was very smart of the president to ensure that he was allied with all of those neighbors to China as well. We spoke with Chris Wright, your colleague on the program this week. Here's what he said, the Energy Secretary. Watch.
But the best answer with China is just better behavior. Be an economic player. Don't be an underminer of world order. Don't be a covert takeover agent of multiple countries. But I think China realizes that agenda doesn't fly with President Trump in the White House. Hopefully, we'll steer those things in a better direction.
You are just at the center of this, Secretary, in this fight over energy prices, federal land control, and, of course, this fight with China. So we're watching it closely. Meanwhile, the president is taking on so much. The administration reportedly filed seizure warrants to take control of more oil tankers linked to Venezuela. U.S. military forces already seized 5 tankers to date, enforcing a blockade around the Latin American nation after the capture of Nicolas Maduro, dictator Maduro. Venezuela's state energy company reportedly boosting production after that takeover, reversing cuts as crude exports resume. What's your take here?
Well, this is, again, brilliant strategy by President Trump after the law enforcement action to take down the criminal who was leading an illegal government, Maduro. This is an opportunity Venezuela hasn't had for decades, which is an opportunity to be able to sell energy on the world market at global prices. And, of course, the U.S. now ensuring that this, the blockade, the embargo is going to work. The quarantine, and the United States is in charge of the sale and disposition of this Venezuelan oil. That's going to allow that oil, whether it's coming to refiners in the U.S., help lower price in the U.S., or if it's going on to the world market. This is going to be great for the American people, great for Venezuela, great for peace in our region, and great for building normal economic relationships with Venezuela.
I mean, Iran is also a major OPEC producer. I mean, when you're talking about oil, and oil prices have moved up on this conflict. You're talking about crude at $61 as, you know, investors are wondering if there's going to be a threat to those exports and tighten global markets even further. What is your assessment of the backdrop there with prices now above 61?
Well, I think it's up on the unrest in Iran. We saw that when the actions that were taken in Venezuela, prices stayed low.
Yeah.
But I do think that what's going on in Iran is incredible. I mean, to think that there's an opportunity to see you know, changes in leadership in Venezuela, Cuba, Iran in quick succession.
Absolutely.
And again, you know, President Trump, he's like hitting triple bank shots with his eyes closed on the geopolitical use of energy diplomacy like no one we've ever seen, and it's just fantastic. The opportunity for American economic prosperity, the possibilities of world peace. I mean, this is a game changer. But what happens in Iran doesn't matter as much anymore because with North America, between Canada, the U.S., Venezuela, Brazil, you know, the center of oil production is shifting from the Middle East back to the Western Hemisphere, and under President Trump's leadership, that energy diplomacy is going to continue to reap benefits for Americans for decades to come.
Well, that is really exciting and certainly a national security issue here. But Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be hosting officials from Greenland and Denmark at the White House today as the president pushes to acquire Greenland. I want to get your take here because President Trump posted on Truth Social moments ago, reiterating Greenland's importance for American national security and that NATO becomes even more effective if the island is in U.S. control. Delaware Senator Chris Coons is leading a bipartisan congressional delegation to the island this week, highlighting the bilateral ties between the U.S. and Denmark. But Greenland's prime minister is refusing to turn over sovereignty. He said in a press conference yesterday, quote, "We are now facing a geopolitical crisis. If we have to choose between the U.S. and Denmark here and now, we choose Denmark, NATO, and the European Union." Here's what happened when the president heard that. Watch this.
On Greenland, sir, the premier of Greenland said today, "We prefer to stay with Denmark." Do you see that as the final word? Who said that? The premier of Greenland.
Well, that's their problem. That's their problem. I disagree with him. I don't know who he is, don't know anything about him, but that's going to be a big problem for him.
Secretary, what do you think the president is referring to?
Well, I think that the strategy here and the opportunity for building a relationship between the United States and Greenland is a strong one. And there's a great history of this, of presidents with leadership. I mean, Thomas Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase, what we saw when Alaska was acquired. And again, I would remind people the Interior Department is responsible for all of our affiliated states that we have around the world in the South Pacific and the Western Pacific, and our territory territories that we've got military bases like Guam, in the Pacific, U.S. Virgin Islands. I mean, 14 time zones span across interior. And of course, Greenland, we need to remind people, think it's far away. It's closer to Washington, D.C. than Alaska is, certainly closer than Hawaii and any of the Pacific Islands that are affiliated with the United States, either as affiliated as states of their own independent or as U.S. territories with U.S. citizens. But I think there's a great opportunity here. I think President Trump, the greatest deal maker in the world, world leaders meet him. They like him. He's never met the premier of Greenland before. They'll be interesting to see how these talks go today, keep that conversation going. But from a strategic standpoint, from a national security standpoint, President Trump 100% correct with what's going on with Russia in the Arctic, what China, their influence up there, China building weather stations in Greenland. These aren't weather stations. This is about North American and European security. If you look at that map from the top of the world down, Greenland plays a critical role in protecting both North America and Europe from incursion from Asia. And President Trump's absolutely right. That needs to be in control of someone who's even stronger than NATO. That's the United States of America.
Yeah, so because of where it is, right? So close to Russia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Meanwhile, back to your portfolio and the Interior Department expanding hunting and fishing access on American public lands unless otherwise required by law or public safety. Secretary, the department also notes recreational activities support a $1.2 trillion economic output for America. So this is also about economics here.
Well, it's the outdoor recreation industry. We've spent a lot of time with them. But as you say, this is an over $1 trillion industry for America, about 3% of employment. We're talking everything from recreational vehicles to sporting goods stores to hunting and fishing guides. It's amazing, and it's part of America's traditions. We head into Freedom 250, the celebration of America's 250th anniversary. All of these bureaus of the interior, from national parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Indian Affairs, all of these organizations that represent opportunities for Americans to get outside, celebrate plentiful, abundant, bountiful, incredible public spaces that we have. We want to make sure that we're expanding that hunting and fishing. I mean, hunting and fishing and the anglers and the hunters, they're the world's best conservationists. They're the ones that pour their money and time into helping preserve these places, and it's a great economic cycle that we're doing that. And of course, as we do that and as we expand the energy agenda, we keep leading the world. We've got the cleanest water, the best soil health, the cleanest air of any country in the world, and that's because of American ingenuity. So hats off to everybody in that industry, in the recreation industry, but also to our incredible energy industry, which is again setting records. We had a lease sale last week in the Permian. $220,000 was the price for 1 acre out of a 32,000 acre sale. $327 million coming into the Treasury and our partners from those sales. When we grow, when we started this top of the hour talking about drill baby drill, when we're drilling, we're putting money in the pockets of the U.S. Treasury, and we're creating opportunities to put dollars back into our outdoor spaces for the use of Americans. It's a win-win-win all the way around. President Trump leading the way on that.
Oh, great stuff there. Secretary, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much. We'll continue to watch your work.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Great to be with you always.
Secretary Doug Burgum joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.